We go down this road with the president imposing more tariffs.
You pay attention with so much at stake.
Seas are rising and chronic flooding will be the new normal.
You navigate, you listen, you keep an ear out. You pay attention, and so do we. We tell the stories of our time every day.
In the 26th day of testimony and on the 139th witness, Shira Springer wept.
We unearth what would otherwise stay hidden.
There's just a lot of hate in this world, and that day, for that hour, we were humans.
Across the street.
The Red Sox have won the World Series.
And around the globe.
It's here and now.
This is Modern Love.
This is WBUR's All Things Considered.
This is only a game.
This is On Point.
This is Radio Boston.
On air, online, on demand, and on stage in the heart of Boston.
I'm Jack Lepiars. Welcome to WBUR City Space.
Always looking forward, paying attention, and knowing that your story is one of our stories.
Good morning. I'm Bob Oakes.
I'm Lisa Mullins.
I'm Meghna Chakrabarty.
I'm Jeremy Hobson.
This is 90.9 WBUR Boston.
Hi, welcome. My name is Amy McDonald, and I run this joint, and it's killing me. How many people, this is your first time here? Come back, check it out. Go to our website, cityspace.org. We're part of WBUR, the NPR station in Boston. We do everything. We do panel discussions, author interviews, cooking, movies, dance, opera, documentaries, and we even do sports. So without further ado, because you don't want to listen to me anymore, but let me just quickly say the questions, we use Slido. If you go to your phone and type in slido.com, and the password for tonight's event is DA96, and during the conversation with Shira and Danny, you can type in your question and we'll put it up and we'll get to it at the end. Oh, DA44. Thank you, my team. Welcome.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Danny, for coming. I think this is going to be a great evening, and we're going to start out with a little surprise video for Danny. It's a throwback to the 80s, mid-80s. So pardon the fuzzy quality. It's not quite high def, but why don't we show...
No, man, it's the prime rib.
Lobster. Ooh. I tell you, it's the salad bar.
Well, boys, after a meal like this, there's only one way to show our appreciation. Whoa.
That's really embarrassing.
Thought that would be a nice surprise.
Yeah. The thing is, Larry's a terrible actor.
I was gonna. What's the backstory behind that commercial? I mean, did you guys go to the Scotch and Sirloin a lot?
Yeah, Scotch and Sirloin was a place that we ate often after games, and they were always generous and welcomed the Celtics in. And so after games, it was very close to the garden, and we often had that many people at the restaurant after the game.
And I heard payment was basically for doing that commercial was free meals at the Scotch and Sirloin.
Free meals at Scotch and Sirloin. That's another reason why there was a lot of players at the... Yeah, and Walton took a real advantage of that. He took like family members, cousins, and the Grateful Dead all at the same time.
Could you imagine a team in today's NBA going out impromptu after a game to a place like the Scotch and Sirloin for dinner?
It was unique then also. The restaurant wasn't like there was a lot of people there, but there were some regulars that were there. But we had our privacy, and we had people coming over and asking for pictures and that type of thing, but it wasn't crazy. And I think that it could happen in today's day and age.
You said the team went there a lot.
As long as nobody knew that it was going on.
You said the team went there a lot. What does that say about the chemistry that you guys had on those teams in the 80s, those championship teams in particular? Is there a special championship chemistry?
Oh, yeah. When you're playing for a championship and win a championship and come real short of winning a championship and all the hard work that goes into that, there is a bond. And, in the era before cell phones, we spent all the time talking on team planes and team buses. And early in my career, we even shared rooms on the road. So yeah, there was a lot of time for bonding, and those relationships are, to me, more meaningful than any of the championship banners.
You mentioned you shared rooms at one point, also flew commercial early in your career?
Flew commercial most of my career, but yeah, with the exception of the last 4 years, I think, of my career.
Wow. So
can't imagine flying commercial.
I was going to say, it's just you simply couldn't do it. I mean, the WNBA does it, but the NBA can't.
Well, I mean, I tried to get Brad to take our players over to Hellenic College, where we used to practice and where we won a few championships just before they got to go into the new facility just down the street here. Because I just don't know how they can appreciate it. But if they went and practiced for a week at Hellenic College, where we did, they would appreciate it a lot more, what they have now.
So drafted in 1981, you've been in the league almost 40 years.
Thanks for that reminder.
Just doing the math there. Player, coach, broadcaster, executive. I think you were alluding to some of this just a few minutes ago. How has the team culture in the NBA changed over that span of time? And also, how has the NBA culture generally changed over that span of time? And what have you seen, what evidence of those changes do you have?
Well, I think that, like I said, I think social media has changed a lot of things in the culture now. But, I see guys with their AirPods in and listening and looking at their phones pretty consistently. And so there's not as much communication as we had. On top of that, we also have much bigger staffs, more coaches. I think we had 2 assistant coaches when I came into the league. In Red's day, I think Red was the general manager and the head coach and the head trainer and the traveling secretary and everything else. And so it's just gotten bigger. Now we have a full-blown analytics department. We have sports scientists and, 3 full-time physios and 3 full-time strength and conditioning coaches. And so there's and with that, there's a lot more player or less player interactive within themselves. Interaction where we used to play 1-on-1 and 2-on-3 and 4-on-4 and organize all of the extra practice time together, and after the coach was done with us. And now it's programmed into players with this strength coach and a player with this coach and a player with this physio and a player eating lunch at this time with, the chef has prepared his meal for him. I don't know what all that means, but it's pretty cozy place to work. I don't know. I've always thought the NBA was a great job, and it was when I played. And I had to sit by Johnny Most in the back of the plane when they were smoking on airplanes. And yes, I let the cigarette burn holes in his pants as he was falling asleep on the plane, and did not try to put the fire out.
By the way, speaking of your playing days, we have a few shots of you in action. This is all good.
That's a foul.
I was going to say, what do you think when you see yourself? We were talking a little bit about, what do you think?
Well, my kids make fun of me that, I couldn't dribble with my left hand, which is not true, by the way, but they've watched lots of games, but, I don't know. We can move on, get rid of that stuff.
Thanks.
Those shorts are a little too tight, but...
wanted to go back. You were talking about the special chemistry that you have on championship teams. 2008, we'll jump forward a few decades. You had, won another championship. Did you know? I mean, did you sense right away? I know it wasn't the start of the season that everybody expected with that team, but did you sense right away that there was a unique chemistry that team had that special element?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it felt a little bit like 1986, which, in my unbiased opinion, I still think is the best basketball team in history of the NBA. But in 2007, the summer of 2007, when we made the trade for KG, which was the final piece at that moment, but it was, Paul was different. Ray was different. Where you're talking about three unbelievable players, first ballot Hall of Fame players that were on lottery teams the year before. And so in our profession, it's hard. I mean, there's only a certain amount of teams that have a chance to win a championship each year, but that hope, you could see the hope in them. And all of them were so excited, and there was a new life for each one of them playing together. And I think that you could feel that at the opening press conference, and I could feel it from KG and Ray and Paul individually when I talked with them before the press conference. So, yeah, it was obviously we had other players with Eddie House and James Posey and Leon Poe and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, we had so many good players on that team, but, getting KG, that was like the final piece. He changed the culture and brought hope to every player on the team.
And you can sense that this is a guy, as you're talking to him, that's going to bring hope. I mean, that seemed like such intangible.
Yeah, I mean, but it's so easy to feel, but you can see it in Paul. We had talked with Paul earlier that year, like it was, he was getting frustrated. Yeah, Paul Pierce. He was, and rightfully so. He wanted to win. He was, in the prime of his career. And so we promised Paul at that time that we would, try to build a team around him, keep him, and add more pieces so there would have hope. And, or we would move him forward and move him somewhere else to play with some other team that had a chance to win.
And we can see the end result of what happens when you have someone who brings hope. The 2008 championship team. Doc Rivers.
Doc was a great coach. I mean, I was talking to someone about Doc today, but Doc is a man's man. With those three strong personalities right there, Paul, KG, and Ray, I mean, Doc was clearly the leader still, and that's hard to do in the NBA. I mean, most teams I've been on, the strong personalities of the team are the leaders of the team, no matter who the coach is. But in that case, Doc was the man. He was the leader of the team.
So I want to switch gears a little bit. This is a successful example of how coach and players, it all comes together. There's great team chemistry. Everybody's on the same page.
Can't we just stay on that subject?
Like to, but last year.
Let's jump forward 17 years. Okay.
We'll jump around with the decades a bit. Okay. But it's on the theme of team chemistry. I widely acknowledged that the team struggled, let's say, with team chemistry. I mean, Kyrie Irving was very outspoken about the difficulties the team had getting on the same page. He felt the younger players weren't showing maturity, and there were other players questioning the number of minutes they had and the roles they play.
Blah, 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 blah. I mean, I blame Scalabrini. He was asking all those questions. But I think that last year was very difficult, mostly for my coach, Coach Stevens, because he had a difficult hand dealt to him. And, Kyrie was wonderful the year before, his first year with us. And last year, his own initiative, he announced to the world that he was going to be a Boston Celtic forever. And,
if you'll have him.
Yeah, and then at Christmas time, he wrote a Nike commercial about wanting his number retired, and so make sure no one wears number 11 again. That I think Enes Kanter is wearing this year.
And pointedly so. He made
And, but I think but things do change, and it did change for Kyrie, and he was feeling a lot of love for a year and a half or so, and then I think a lot of reasons personally. I don't want to. You have to ask Kyrie what those would be and what he would like to share publicly. But I had many conversations with Kyrie, and I like Kyrie, and I'm grateful for what he brought to our team. But it certainly wasn't his fault what happened last year. He was just one of 12 guys. But I think that the difficulty was the team had so much success the year before without Kyrie and Gordon, that, in my opinion, I'm not so sure that team, beats Toronto. We didn't have to face Toronto. We faced a young Philly team, and we, really beat a really young Milwaukee team also. And I think those were good matchups for us. But the team won 55 games, and they, made it to the Eastern Conference Finals in 7 games with the Cavs, and so there was this all these young players got so much attention for their success, and it hurt Gordon and Kyrie. I don't know if they would both admit. I know Gordon has admitted it, but players, that's a hard thing for that success. So now we start the next year. So all these young guys are now Jalen and Jason. They want to be all-stars. And I remember Jaylen Brown coming up to me in the lunchroom, and he says, how does this team this year compare to the 1986 team? And I said, that's not me. Can you trade Shira Springer for
Great.
Brian Scalabrine? Yeah. No, that is not a trade we will do.
Thanks.
But I think that team, so that just tells you where, they were, they did have some hope. But
what did you say when you were asked?
I asked him, I said, well, what do you think? Tell me what you think. And I just was like, seriously?
Well, wait. What did he think? I mean, did he legitimately
He started
think?
going matchups, like I'm better than you. And, and Kyrie's, close to Bird. And it's like, okay, well, let's just stop right there. But, I think that's just where their head was. And I think that they thought they were good and they were going to be great and it was all going to work. And we all did. But I knew going into the year, I mean, Mike and I talked. This is Mike Sarin, by the way. Mike, will you stand up for everybody?
Come on, Mike.
Mike and I, we talked all the time, and with Coach Stevens, we knew that it was going to be a challenge.
Mike's assistant GM and counsel,
yes.
Team counsel, just
team counsel,
so you know.
Assistant GM, yeah, and he's
brilliant.
And so, let's not get carried away. But we have these discussions about how it's going to be difficult because. Kyrie wants to be MVP. Gordon wants to make the best comeback ever. He's worked so hard in the offseason after a devastating injury. We have 2 young kids that, are now want to be all-stars. We have Terry Rozier and Marcus Morris that want contracts because they've both been, underpaid for many years in Morris's case. And so there were so many of these individual agendas that it was difficult. And so you go into a situation like that. I'll give you an example. No, I won't say that example because that's talking about another team's players. But
I was going to say we got to be careful. We don't want this to be a low-cost event
right,
all the way around.
Right. So I think that you go into training camp and you fight for jobs, and oftentimes things work themselves out. Like players just take the job. They play so well, they win it, and makes it easier on the coach to decide who is the guy that gets those minutes. But last year was difficult. There was never really a job won. Gordon would have a great game. Morris would have a great game. Jalen would have a great game. Tatum would have a great game. But it was hard to have we didn't have that many of those games where we had 4 or 5 players, playing great at the same time and doing it consistently. So the coach is constantly trying to find what rotation works. And I think it was just we had great moments. We started out 10-10, and then we went through a 25-game stretch where we were the number 1 team in basketball over those 25 games. And so there was hope. It was like, okay, we're starting to get there. We're the number 1 rated team in the league. And then it went sour. It just went downhill, and we hit a skid, and then we picked it back up again, and we started playing well. And then we win 5 playoff games in a row, and it looks like, wow, this team, has a chance. We win the first game at Milwaukee, and then it was ugly after that. Yeah. But that was the way that the season went, and it was a frustrating season that way.
Where does a season like that rank in terms of the toughest part of your job? I mean, you've assembled a team that you think, and that others, quite frankly, think is going to reach the NBA Finals, and then it ends in disappointment. Is that one of the toughest aspects of your job? What looks good on paper?
Yeah, so I think that managing expectations are always a difficult part of the job. I mean, when people come out and say, we're going to win 67 games, I mean, that's insane. Like, I never believed that about this team, but I did think that there was a chance that our team could grow and blossom and get to the NBA Finals, and who knows what happens. I mean, Toronto was very fortunate that Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant both get hurt in the NBA Finals. Otherwise, Golden State's probably a champion again. So you never know, but I felt like our team could grow. And like I said, we had those spurts where it looked like we were headed in the right direction, and our team was coming together, and guys were accepting lesser roles. I thought Jaylen Brown in particular did a really good job of accepting a lesser role than he had thought that he, going into the year. It took him a little while to get there, but he did. Showed a lot of maturity. But yeah, I think that it's not so much that you have an expectation and you don't meet it, because 29 teams go through those types of seasons and only 1 team wins. It's more the way it happened. It's more like it's not fun. The players weren't having fun. The coach is not having fun. There's no joy in this unbelievable job and this unbelievable opportunity. And I think that it was just, that was the mood of the team most of the year.
Talk about managing expectations and how difficult that can be. I'm wondering, is it more difficult in a city like Boston, where there is such a spotlight on the sports teams here?
I don't really think so. So there is championship aspirations and expectations in Boston, and we're spoiled because we've had so many great success stories in all the 4 major sports in Boston. So that's fun. Like, I love that. I think that's great for us. I like that as a player when the Red Sox are playing in the World Series and the Patriots were in the Super Bowl in 1986. And I mean, I think that brings excitement to the sports. But I think maybe the new generation doesn't understand how long there was without winning championships. 1918 to 2004, I think, for the Red Sox. But we are a little bit spoiled. But I think that, high expectations are good. But I really believe that Boston fans are aware of what real expectations should be. Not always the media people, like Scalabrini.
That's why you should trade him.
But I think that they have. I mean, at least when I talk to people, I think that their expectations are pretty reasonable. I think last year might be one of those exceptions.
Did what happened last year influence the way you approach team building this year? I mean, obviously the big off-season addition was Kemba Walker to replace Kyrie at point guard, but did what happened with the chemistry issues last year make you think more about acquiring players, high character players? I mean, it has been said of your draft class that it's a high character draft class?
We always think about drafting character. I mean, drafting is a hard process because you're picking between 23-year-olds sometimes and 19-year-olds that have great upside, and some guys that are just great character but have, limited physical skills, and some guys that have amazing upside and that are a little more immature, and everywhere in between. And so it's a very complex process. But I think this year it was just, I don't think that's the case, but I think that we didn't have, the top echelon players to pick from this year. So, we often look for really high character players, and we're able to get some that happen to be very good players that fill a need and fill a role. And Kemba, we were very fortunate to come away with Kemba through this free agent process. I mean, that's just, he's a class act. And my biggest concern, honestly, through all of this was I want my coach to be happy who he's coaching. And, that's the hardest job. I've been at this business a long time. I won't say the years like you did already, but
secret is out.
You gotta have fun. Like, you really have to have joy. That doesn't mean that every minute is going to be happy, and everybody's going to face adversity and challenges and trials through a course of a season. But it still has to be fun. You still have to be excited about getting up and trying to figure out what we can get better at, and that's very important to me. And that's the stress for me, is the player's stress and the coach's stress. Like, I can deal with it. I've been here a long time. I know we're going to win some games and lose some really tough games, but I feel like all these guys are my kids, and I need to, it's good to go through some adversity, but last year was a little much.
So you mentioned one of the things you wanted to have this year is for your head coach, Brad Stevens, to enjoy coaching the players that he has.
Yeah.
So,
and not just Brad, but all of the coaches. I want them to have fun and enjoy the job, and the whole organization. Our fans enjoy the product on the court. Our owners, who invested millions and hundreds of millions of dollars into our team. I want all those people to really enjoy what we have going.
Now, I don't want you to speak for Brad, but I'm sure you've had conversations over the off season, and he's gotten a sense of what the team is going to be like this season. Is he happy with what he's got?
Yeah, I think that Brad's really excited for the year. I mean, there's still some uncertainty as to what's going to happen, but I think that, and we have a new group, but I think he really likes them. I think he really likes the spirit of the team. He likes how many people have come to off-season workouts, much more than we've ever had in my 17 years here in Boston. Is we have a lot more players in the gym, and we'd probably have a lot more if we didn't have 6 of them playing in the World Cup.
To get to the World Cup, but so Brad is happy, you're happy. Expectations.
I'm always happy, Shira.
That's true. Well, maybe not last year, but expectations. I'll put you on the spot. What's expectations, and also what are you going to be looking at during training camp, during the first couple weeks of training camp, whether it's something, a what or a who?
I'll just look at training camp and evaluate what we might need, and I'll be talking with Brad on a daily basis, and what those holes may be, and evaluating myself of what I see and the upside of some of our younger players and how they can fit in or not. And but I think that we're all very happy and hopeful for a good year. I don't make expectations. I believe that's, like I said, with our 2007 team, they made the expectation. It doesn't matter what I think. And last year, it doesn't matter what I think or what Bill Simmons thinks or what Scalabrini thinks, but it matters what they think internally. And that was a discouragement for the year last year. But I let the players set the expectations.
want to talk a little bit about your player evaluation process, because there's a person involved in that player evaluation process and has been for about 15 or 16 years that I'm not sure many people have heard of or know about. You guys familiar with the brain doctor? Are there any show of hands of who's heard of the brain doctor? All right. So there's a guy named John Neednagel. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. And he hasn't.
I think he's evaluated your brain.
He has. He has. He's done yours, I know, right? We did this during a preseason.
Mine's a little better than yours, I think.
I don't think so.
I'm pretty sure it's not, but it's different.
Well, I was going to say,
I have better visual skills than you.
Yeah.
You're a little smarter.
It doesn't quite work that way. I mean, what he, and we can both sort of explain it because we spent some time with the brain doctor. Basically, he looks at how your brain functions and how that brain function will translate to physical skills, and from there he makes an evaluation as to what your strengths would be as a player. And he's a guy you've used to, I remember when he used to sit under the basket at draft camp and watch guys and type them. So explain a little bit more about the brain doctor's process and how you employ him to scout players.
Well, John has been a dear friend for many years, and he's helped me a lot in my playing, in my coaching, and in my management career. And I think he has a great knack of reading people, and he understands how their brain works. And it doesn't always translate. Like, he doesn't just look at a brain type and think that guy's going to be better because he has this brain type, but he sees more potential in a certain wiring. And it's not a personality test. It's a wiring. It's an innate wiring, and it's basically how your motor skills work, what part of your brain is more active under stress and pressure, how you process information, how you can visually see the game or not see the game, has a lot to do with improvement of young people. And I don't know the science behind it. I just know that John has a great knack of being able to read people. And it's been amazing how it's helped me in my life, because it helps me understand that we all are really very unique individually, and there really is no categories of people. And it's helped me in raising my kids, and just with we know everybody's a little bit different, but like, this is real conversation about how different they all are and in what ways they are different and how I can best help them succeed, is a process that I've enjoyed with John.
Let's take it from the abstract to some specifics. Do you recall either a prediction that John made that surprised you and it eventually came true with scouting, where he said, you got to get this guy because he's, XYZ brain type? Or was there a player on the team who you used the brain type knowledge that John gave you to coax a better performance out of him?
Yeah, so I think all of the above. I've known John for 30 years, and we've talked sports. We talk about the Masters and who's going to win the Masters on a Saturday, with Sunday with 3 people tied for first, who's going to win. And he'll give me his predictions of how that Sunday round is going to go. And, the Peyton Manning and Ryan Leaf draft, he's clear.
Did he call that?
He absolutely called that, but he was even hired by the San Diego Chargers.
June Jones at the time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You probably did a story on that. Yeah. So, why don't you answer the question? Why don't you make me answer all the questions? I'll ask you about the brain doctor. But but anyway, he's very good. That's why I have him in my employ. John's had stage 4 melanoma for the last 8 years, and so he doesn't have the same kind of energy that he's had, but it's just a miracle that he's still with us. And I talk to him regularly, and he doesn't have the same kind of energy to go around and scout all around the world like he has done in the past, but he goes to draft combine camps and goes to certain games that we assign him to in conference tournaments. And when we have special really tough draft decisions to make, we at least want to know how they're wired and have John's expertise on that.
What's your brain type?
I am ESTP.
Which translates to? Extroverted.
It translates to Brett Favre and Peyton Manning, Johnny Unitas, Hall of Fame quarterback is what I should have been. Yeah.
Could have been.
Although Steve Nash and Kemba Walker and Steve Nash are two point guards that are ESTPs, yeah.
All right, so does it help you relate to players that are the same type?
You know
brain
what?
type?
Steve Nash and Kemba Walker relate to everybody. They're really, really easy. So that's ESTPs. We relate to people.
Okay, good to know. So you're ESTP brain type, but generally from
you're an ENTP.
Yes, you remember.
Yes. And Mike's an ENTP.
Yes.
And he's still single. And you're still single.
This has gone on long enough. This is decades of
And you're both Jewish, so.
Yeah.
Don't you guys agree?
This is great. Anyway, so ESTP. But how would you describe yourself as a player? What strengths do you think you have? And I also we'll start there.
I think I had good energy in the extroverted side. I mean, I had good daily energy. I woke up with positive vibes most every day. I had good visual skills. I could see the court. I could anticipate what was happening on both ends of the court. And I had, good dexterity, good hand-eye coordination. I could use my left hand. I do most things left-handed, but I shot a basketball right-handed and throw a baseball right-handed. But those were probably my strengths.
We can actually take a look at some of you in action, if you'd like.
Uh-oh.
No, this is all good. This is all good. I mean, after you threw me under the bus with the setup, but this is all good. There you go.
That's a layup.
I don't know if you can recognize the game, but you can see it's the Sixers. This is late 80s, let's just say 1988. You're certainly making a lot of shots. Can you place this game? Does this look familiar?
Yeah, so the biggest thing about this game is I think I had a high-scoring game, but the reason is because Bird's not playing. Yeah, give me the ball more. So I'm trying to put an impressive show on for Bird right here. You got to start passing me the ball more. I can score, bro.
Yeah, I was going to say when he says he has a high-scoring game, this was your career high night in December 1988. 45 points that game.
Yeah. And Bird wasn't playing.
That is true. That is true.
I think I looked this up one time. I had one of my stats guys. They don't really do much else. So look up my old stats are one of my favorite things. So I wanted to know my top 10 or 15 scoring games because someone asked me the question. I have no idea what it was, but most of them were without Bird or McHale playing, or either one. What is Scalabrini?
Or Scalabrini wasn't playing.
Yeah. He was just a baby when I was playing, but.
He lost by 100 points if he was playing.
Yeah.
Young Celtics fan there. So speaking of Larry Bird.
I like Scalabrini, by the way. He's fun to tease.
By the way, he's lifting up his cap here to Blue Jays.
Yeah.
We're talking about, your other sports, should have been a quarterback, could have been a Major League Baseball player.
Well, I actually was.
And was. Yeah. Well, could have had a long career with the Toronto Blue Jays. Could have been a real
baseball player is what you're trying to say.
Yes.
Okay.
But you're talking about Larry Bird and high-scoring games when he was not on the court.
Just to be clear, I loved playing with Larry Bird.
Well, that's where I was going.
I wanted him on my team. But it was fun every now and then for him to be sitting and watching.
That's where I was going. What was it like playing with Larry, being in practices with Larry, the personality, the persona, the person?
I mean, it was, it's hard to describe, but Larry was such a great teammate. But the greatest characteristic, he had a lot of great qualities as a leader of a team and some not so great qualities. But his greatest thing, in my opinion, besides his giftedness and his obvious talent of shooting and vision and passing in both hands and everything else, was his confidence. I always looked at myself as a really confident player. I was a college player of the year in 1981, and I'm playing with Kevin McHale, who I think is another level of confidence than I had, and we were very close. But Larry was at another level of confidence. And it's hard to describe, but he just believed he was going to make every shot. Even not open shots, but defended shots with two guys on him. And he had a really high expectation of his teammates, and I think it drove us all. But his confidence level rubbed off on us as well. And he just had magnificent confidence and belief in himself. I think that the only other player of my lifetime that I would put in that same category would be Michael Jordan.
It's interesting you bring up Michael Jordan. When you bring up Michael Jordan, it brings to mind for me 1993 finals, NBA finals. You're playing for Phoenix at this point.
Whoa. This was not part of what you told me you might ask me.
Well, you brought up Michael Jordan, so I think, when you some of you may remember this game, Game 4 of the 1993 NBA Finals. You know where I'm going with this, right?
I don't really, no.
Oh, come on.
No, I thought you were, I don't even care about Game 4. Game 6 was I couldn't sleep for 3 months after losing that game.
Okay, but what happened in Game 4 with Michael Jordan, the two of you kind of jawing most of the game, so it brings to mind, what was it like to go up against, you're an intense.
Do you have video proof of this? So,
funnily enough, the NBA doesn't like to share footage of that kind of stuff.
Oh, they don't share the fights.
They don't.
That's the fun stuff, Shira.
That is that. I agree, but okay. There was some let's just say some tension.
So,
and what is it like to go up against? You're a competitive guy. He's intense. You're intense.
Playing against Michael Jordan is amazing. He's the best player of all time. That was a highlight.
Still, you put him up there.
Yeah, I still put him up there. He was the greatest combination of athleticism, brains, toughness, focus. Couldn't get him off his way. That's why I say, mentally he was in the same category as Bird, in my opinion. And so, with great both end of the court athleticism and length, and so I think that Michael was, that he could embarrass you easily. He scored 63 on us in a playoff game in his second year in the NBA, and I think Bird made the comment he was disguised as, it was God disguised as Michael Jordan, I think was the quote. But we all knew how special he was in those years, and when you get a chance to play against someone like that, that you better bring your best game or you're going to get humiliated.
And you liked that challenge.
I did like that challenge. And Michael and I were close. We played a lot of golf in the off season together. And, maybe that's why I wasn't intimidated by Michael. I had all the respect in the world from him. But, maybe it was I had two older brothers, 3 and 4 years older. And I learned not to be intimidated by anybody.
What's it like on the golf?
Can't survive.
What's it like on the golf course with Michael Jordan?
Michael's really fun to play with because he's really rich and he thinks he's really good.
Enough said. What's the biggest difference between the players of your era, 80s, 90s, and Michael's era and Larry's era, and today's players?
I don't know how much different. The game is different, Shira, with the rules. You have, I mean, the three-point line, as you just watched the little highlights you had right there, I mean, it was a bend and break defensive schemes where now you have to defend the three-point line. And I think that has added a level of intensity to the game that I think is great. A lot of people say, oh, you know, the games in the 80s were so much better. And it's like, no, the games are better now. Like, the players are playing harder than we played. And the reason is because you have to fight over so many more. I mean, what Marcus Smart and Kemba Walker and those guys do night in and night out is so much more physically demanding than how we played, which was because the three-point line wasn't so prevalent. So I'm not a huge fan of the three-point line, but I do like that part of the game, the spacing of the game. So now we say, well, there's not as many good big men, and it's because of this emphasis on the three-point line, which I don't believe. I believe that Shaquille O'Neal and Patrick Ewing and Hakeem Olajuwon and Robert Parrish and Larry Bird and Kevin McHale and, you know, on down the list, they would be dominant in today's game as well. And there would be more inside play. I just believe that there's only a certain amount of stars born. And, you know, so Dirk Nowitzki was a 7-footer who was a shooter, but, you know, Dirk was more wired that way as a shooter, as a scorer. I mean, there's only been one Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in history. Think about that, a guy that shot 60% of no-dribble hooks from 15 feet. Like that, those are terrible shots in the game today. And there's only been one, like nobody else, everyone practices them. We practice way more than he ever did, but he was gifted. And so everybody would take Jabbar on their team now, and he would still be an MVP candidate year in and year out, even in the style of game that we play today.
What's one thing that players have to deal with today that you're glad you didn't have to deal with when you played?
I kind of wish I would have to deal with anything they have to deal with. They got it made. Are you kidding me?
Even social media and sort of
social media, just turn it off. Keep it in your room. I mean, who cares? Like what some fan says that doesn't even have a face, that's a knucklehead, but yet some players it affects, and some kids it affects, and I don't like social media. I mean, I wish that it's a problem. We need to do something about it to make it better for our players. We need to help to educate them. And, you know, we as parents and grandparents, we all need to be educated on what it's doing to our children. And every kid's different. It has different reactions. But when you have players and coaches and general managers that have burner accounts and that are, you know, attacking people that are attacking them, I don't know. I mean, I'm not mad at those people. That just tells us there's a problem. Mm-hmm. And so I think that, but as a player, it's like being a politician. I mean, you better have thick skin or you don't go into politics, right? We all know that. And you better not go into professional sports and not know that you're going to be criticized and you're going to be talked about on radio and you're going to be tweeted about if you go 0 for 7 from the field or you miss a clutch free throw. I mean, there's just people out there that are going to do that. So I don't understand the mentality of how it can negatively affects players so much, but they've just grown up with a need and so much praise and so much attention that for whatever reason it is affecting them. I remember playing, I remember one time with Dennis Johnson, who I adored as a teammate, but Dennis was very sensitive to media. And I remember one time Jackie McMullen, she was at practice and she had written that, you know, the Celtics, if they don't, you know, if Danny Ainge, who was 3 for 12, and Dennis Johnson, who was 4 for 15, you know, don't start making their outside shots, then they're not going to win. Well, duh, you know, you got to make shots to win. But like Dennis took offense to that. He thought that was, you know, an attack. And so he said something to Jackie, like she shouldn't be at practice after she wrote those derogatory comments about DJ at practice. So it's been going on forever. It's just in a newspaper. Now it's on in social media. But there are people that are way more sensitive to the criticism. And, coaches have had to learn to deal with this. And I've had to learn to deal with it in players. And we've talked about, it's just like I said, it's like having children. Each one's different, and each player is different and unique, and you have to try to get them to be their best.
So staying with sort of social media and criticism, social media does, though, give players a bigger platform than they might have had in the past. And in the NBA in particular, some of the superstars like LeBron James and like the Warriors, Steph Curry, have used those platforms to take on social injustice, to take on the current president.
Just like Hollywood.
Well, I was going to ask you, what do you think about that? And, you've also got someone in the coaching ranks, in Greg Popovich in San Antonio, who's been critical of the president and supportive of Colin Kaepernick. What do you make of the political activism and the social activism of today's players?
I mean, they're NBA players. I'm around them all the time. I'm much more curious of what you have to say about them than any NBA player or any famous person in Hollywood. They're probably the last people on earth that I would ask their opinion of political views. But at the same time, I think Greg Popovich has earned my trust as a fan and a person that knows him and has been around him, as has Steve Kerr, who is also vocal. Is another guy that I really like as a person. I don't like all their opinions, but I do respect their opinions. And I wish that, in the world of politics, that it wasn't so evil and wasn't so attack-oriented. I wish we could disagree a little more gracefully. But,
we've done that.
But I think that, like I said, Steve Kerr and Popovich, I like listening to them, but there's not very many players that I really care what they have to say about that are influencing me in any way on any aspect of life, except for the fact that I do like the fact that a lot of the players and celebrities provide great service for people and do give back to their communities, and social media allows them to get the message out and things that they're doing proactively to make the world a better place.
It seems to me that the NBA players' desire, willingness to speak out goes a little bit hand in hand with a certain sense of empowerment they feel. And I think we see that manifest a bit in what happened during free agency this summer, which is you have these superstar players sort of trying to determine their own destiny, their own career futures. Superstars are recruiting other superstars to come play with them in big market cities. You have Kyrie going to the Brooklyn Nets and Kevin Durant joining him. You have Anthony Davis teaming up with LeBron James in LA with the Lakers. This is the so-called super teams. Seems like there's going to be a dearth of super teams, or a glut rather of super teams at some point in the NBA soon. What do you make of the super teams, or what does it mean for the NBA? Good, bad, or is it a more complex issue for that? And how does it affect the way you plan long term with the Celtics?
Well, so first of all, these players have all played at least 7 years, in some cases 8 years, with the teams that drafted them. They've given them a long time to give them hope that we talked about earlier. And I think that I can't talk about individual names of players, but I think that players want hope. And I don't have a problem with it. In one thing that people don't talk about is, I think Oklahoma City, who traded away 2 very, very good players this year, came away with a pot of gold. And I think that even though it's not immediate gratification, it's an opportunity for them to build something very special going forward. And so, that's a part that's never discussed. It's always about, like what's good for this year and players wanting to team up. But Oklahoma City didn't have to trade Paul George to the Clippers. They could have very well kept Russell Westbrook, and they had him under contract, and Paul George, and kept him.
Yeah, I forgot. Paul George, and we got Kawhi Leonard out in
right. So I mean,
LA
but they could have not done that, and so but the teams have to cooperate too, and they have some say in some of the different things, and so. I think that it's been going on for quite a while that players, I mean, when KG came to Boston, he didn't want to come to Boston. He didn't think we had enough. It wasn't anything against Boston, the city of Boston. There was a lot written and said about that at the time. It was, I don't think just Paul and I together alone can win a championship. And then we traded for Ray Allen. He goes, I want to come to Boston. Mm-hmm. And I want to play with that team. I want to play with Ray Allen. They had a connection. They're both from South Carolina. They've known each other in the league, and there's a mutual respect. And so that changed his way of doing it. So that was, and then LeBron going to Miami. And so it's been going on since at least 2007.
Okay.
So I don't think that's changed any. And again, those players had given a lot to the cities that they started in. So I don't think they're jumping ship. I think that that 7 or 8 years to try to give them some hope, I think is ample time for a franchise. It's just and just like Kyrie wanting to leave us at some point during the season last year, having a change of heart and going to play somewhere else, that's his right. He has earned that right. I hold no grudges to him. I'm grateful that he tried. And it's our responsibility to try to do all we can to keep that player to want to be with us.
Switch gears a little bit. You have 4 players playing. We talked a little bit about the FIBA World Cup going on in China earlier. You mentioned it. You have 4 players on Team USA, 2 of whom are now injured. How do you feel about your players playing an international tournament, injury potential there, and it's so close to training camp?
Well, first of all, I think it's an amazing opportunity. I had a chance to play against the USA teams when I was a player. Wasn't on any USA team, but just scrimmaging against them and playing against them was a highlight. It was a lot of fun just in preparing those guys to go. In those days, just destroy the rest of the world. But I think that this team, I think it's a great opportunity. And I prefer my players playing basketball in the summertime as opposed to not playing basketball. So I think it's great conditioning. Of course, there's been guys that have been hurt this summer playing pickup games in their gyms. I mean, DeMarcus Cousins got hurt and out for the year already for the
Achilles,
Lakers
right?
this year. An ACL tear. And so a couple college kids I know that I was looking forward to watching this year, same thing. So injuries are part of playing pickup, practice, games, whatever. But I think that the upside of them playing competitive basketball against some of the best players in the world, playing with a team, with a great coach, with great coaches, with Kerr and Jay Wright and Steve and Greg Popovich and other coaches there, and play for Team USA. I think that's a dream come true for our guys, and I think that we should take advantage of it every summer if we can. One story I have about that is, I played with Charles Barkley for 3 years, and Charles was MVP in 1993, and that was the year, coincidentally, he was in the best shape of his life. He had played for the Dream Team in 1992, and he came out and he beat out Michael Jordan for the MVP of the league. And he was on my team in Phoenix, and I saw that difference in the conditioning after being in the Dream Team. So working hard, playing hard, getting in good shape, playing basketball the right way, all those things are, to me, are much greater than, keeping guys away from getting injured.
So last question before we get to some audience questions. This summer, the Celtics joined the ranks of NBA teams that have female assistant coaches. You hired Kara Lawson. Little news here. You also made a hire in your player development department. Allison Feaster, former WNBA star, former Harvard star, will be joining the player development staff. I think her first day was yesterday.
She's as smart as you, Shira.
I know. Smarter. What do these two women bring to your organization? What was, behind their hiring?
Well, Brad and I have talked a lot about this, and Mike and I have talked a lot about it. I believe that women bring a different perspective. In any sort of business, I would want, if I had a board of 15 people, I would want probably 14 women and me, but at least 50-50, it would be. And so Brad feels the same way. My wife has, she counsels me all the time, and Brad has a wife that's actually his agent.
Tracy's great.
Yeah, and she serves on the board at Butler University still and so forth, but we feel like, I feel like there's a different perspective. And we have a lot of players also that are raised by single mothers. And, but I think that the biggest thing is there's just, I believe men and women are different, and they bring a different perspective. We have so many people that we have that are willing to do and go through the grind that is so hard to get in the NBA, to get a job in the NBA. They're so coveted that, they'll work for 3 years for very minimal amounts of money and do just, 18-hour work days. But, these two women that we brought in are very, very well educated, experienced in the world of basketball, and I think they're going to bring great perspective to our coaching staff and to our entire organization. And I've already seen, we had one player that suffered a tragic death in his family, and he gravitated towards our woman assistant coach, and she was the one that was able to provide him some guidance and so forth. And so I'm already seeing an impact.
Got to put you on the spot. How long till we see a female head coach in the NBA, and how long until we see a female GM in the NBA?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not hiring a GM right now. Don't try to fire me already, Shira. Are you trying to trade me for you?
No. I just, was hoping for some prediction.
Yeah, I don't have any idea.
Soon?
I have no idea.
So just so you all know again, Slido.com #DA44 is the code you enter to send audience questions to me, and we will turn to those. The first one that rises to the top, they get to vote. How do you expect the Celtics team to it just moved away where did it go? How do you expect the Celtics team to handle a forward and center dominant Eastern Conference after the loss of Al Horford?
Yeah, Al is a big loss for us. And, on top of that, it's a big gain for Philly, who's, one of our rivals in the East. We have to do it by committee, with all the free agents that we signed this year, and, we're going to do it by committee and do the best we can. We have to be able to play small and play at a faster tempo, and we also have to be able to play big. We have a lot of big players that we really like on our team, but there's not one Al Horford that is, his strength was he could play with any group of players. He could play center, he could play power forward, and pretty much match up with anybody, play inside and play outside. So we're just going to have to do that with other players.
And a character guy, a real stabilizing force on the team.
Yeah, we have a lot of good character guys this year. I'm less worried about that.
How do you evaluate players who don't show up in traditional box score statistics, like a Marcus Smart?
I mean, come on. Like, if you watch a game, you can evaluate Marcus Smart. I mean, that guy, he makes me smile more during the course of a game than any other player. I mean, more than the great, Kyrie or Isaiah, who were just so magnificent with the basketball. But Marcus's charge taking and steals. I mean, what about those 2 calls he got on James Harden to win that game against Houston? I mean, like, that's unbelievable. I've never seen anybody win a game that way. And I mean, that's what I love about Marcus. He just, he does it different. Last year, he not only did all those things defensively, but he started making more shots and became a much more efficient offensive player and becoming more complete.
I'm going to try this one. This is an analytics question. In such a public-focused industry, how do you see the future of analytics in basketball being balanced with public perceptions of certain management decisions?
I think that it's a process that we've been going through for quite a long time. I think that we're all seeing the value of analytics in basketball, and it's just, I think that there's just varying degrees as to how much value, but there definitely is value. And right now, I think that the analytics are more valuable in coaching than they are in evaluating. But there is value that they bring to the evaluation process as well.
You mentioned the list of all the people you had on your team staff early on, the physios and the nutritionists and so on. So how many analytics people do the Celtics employ?
4.
Okay. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's too many. They're nerds. I mean, come on. They're geeks and nerds.
Mike, do you have something to say about that?
The answer to the question is Danny does not care about public perception at
all. What is your general approach and method in receiving and making trades, or trades and trade offers?
I like to make trades that are good for us.
Can you tell us, go a little deeper on that?
Well, I like better players than what we're getting. I'll tell you, so like right now I feel like I really like our players on our team. I mean, I almost always like all the players on the team. I invest a lot emotionally with these kids, and I want to see them succeed wherever they play. Trading is hard. Trading a player that you draft, that you develop a relationship with, that you just root for every second. You get to know their families, and that's really hard. That's a really hard process. And but that's just part of the job. It's a hard job, and that's the hardest part of it, is trading away players. And but ultimately we have to do what's best. So now we find ourselves in a situation where we have good players. I don't think our team, going back to the question of Al Horford, I don't think our team is like a perfect fit. I don't think Brad knows exactly who his starting lineup is and who his first sub off the bench is, and what each guy is going to bring to the table. I think that's going to be a process this year for us. And so the question is, do you trade for need, or do you trade for talent? Because I think we have some really talented wings, and we have some uncertainty at the 4 and the 5. So let's hope our 4s and 5s can play as good as we hope they can, and we can keep our talented wings, because you need a lot of them.
Okay, we'll switch to you as a player. What's your favorite moment in your career as a player?
1986 NBA championship was my favorite moment. A close, maybe equal, is 2008 NBA championship. Matter of fact, 1986 was special in one way, in that you just worked so hard, and we lost in 85, and 85 was killer loss to the Lakers. And that team in 1986 was not going to be denied. And the only thing that wasn't perfect about the season is we beat the Rockets in the finals instead of the Lakers. But it was a magnificent team, a magnificent year. Like, every day was fun. It was intense. It was, our coaches were going crazy because we weren't, focused every second, because it's such a long year. So we'd lose a game on Christmas Day by 25 after we had a 25-point lead. But we knew we were good, and we knew we were going to win, and that was special. In 2008, it's different, because as a player, you really think about yourself. Not that you don't think of your teammates, but it's really about you. Unfortunately, it's too much that way. And as a general manager, it's about everybody. It's not just the 12 players or 15 players. It's about the coaches. It's about the owners. It's about the fans. It's about, the player that doesn't play very much and what he's done to help. And you see a much bigger picture of all the things that go into winning a championship. And so that's a pretty special moment also.
I think that transitions nicely into this question. Do you wish the culture of the NBA would be more team-focused and less about the drama of individual stars?
Well, the league started really thriving when they started selling Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Michael Jordan. And, I'll be forever grateful for those three guys because, we love individual stars. And we love to follow the fantasy leagues, and it's been a big part of the game. But I don't think that takes away from, what can develop internally. There's a difference between what's on Twitter and what's advertised on ESPN and TNT. Like, turn on the Boston Celtics to watch Larry Bird. Like, I was never offended by that. People aren't watching Danny Ainge play. I'm grateful I'm playing with Larry Bird, and they get to watch me play. If I'm not there, someone else is playing there, and they're still going to win. So I think that there's so many opportunities for so many people to thrive. And I think that there is, even though that's a PR move and a good strategy for promoting the sport of having superstars, I do think that internally, anybody that's been around our coach, both of our coaches, Doc Rivers or Brad Stevens, it's all about team. It's all about sacrifice. It's all about humility and gratitude, and so that really does exist.
Couple more questions here, and then we'll call it a night. What qualities does a person allow?
Well, who's determining what questions get asked?
They vote them up.
Oh,
actually, no. They're getting. All right, so now they're voting others up. From my screen is a little behind. If you can turn around.
I'd prefer not to.
What do you enjoy more, being an NBA player or an NBA GM?
There's nothing like playing. That's not even close. Playing in the NBA, are you kidding me? That's every kid's dream. That's my 15 grandkids' dream, and some of them are girls, and some of them can't play at all. And that's still their dream. So anyway,
might have a little something to do with their grandfather.
I was very fortunate to be able to play in the NBA and to have a long career in the NBA, and so yeah, but playing beats everything.
Going to save the future question for last, but what qualities as a person allow you to manage a group of individuals with differing personalities and different goals, both in basketball and personally? But I think they're talking, you're as an executive, but you can also, as a coach, you had to deal with that as well.
Now you just confused me. I have no idea what. Ask that question.
What quality?
Are you improvising on the question coming from the audience?
I'm trying to, put you.
You're trying to explain their questions?
No, I'm trying to give, try to dig a little deeper.
Who asked that question? Oh, all right. Nice. Good.
So, am I doing your question justice? See?
Okay.
There.
Well, she is an ENTP, so she's smart.
What qualities as a person allow you to manage a group of individuals with differing personalities and different goals, both in basketball and personally? And all I was adding was you had to do that as a coach in addition to, doing this as your executive capacity.
I think that the biggest key to success is just having good people around you. Just having good, we've been fortunate. And I like the people that I work with. And so it's really easy to get along with everybody. I also believe that it's hard in an atmosphere that we work in with people that do so many hours of work to not respect their opinions. And so my style is just letting everybody talk. letting everybody voice their opinions, showing that we value each and every person in the organization. And I think it creates a better atmosphere.
And last question from Josh, wherever Josh.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. Good. See.
Okay.
See. From Josh, wherever Josh is, somewhere. What new trends do you think will? This is the crystal ball question. What new trends do you think will take hold of the NBA over the course of the next decade? So your crystal ball. Look into your crystal ball.
Crystal ball. I see like a 7'7" guy standing in the middle of the paint, playing some zone. Bring some zone back to the NBA. Don't you think that's a good idea?
I wish I could grow like 4 feet.
4 feet? You mean 2 4 feet? Or 4 more feet? Okay.
4 feet, so you can be your 7-footer. But seriously, what do you see happening?
I was serious.
Yeah. But what do you see? How do you see the league taking shape over the next decade or so? I mean, it certainly seems poised for another sort of big growth spurt, particularly with what's happening in football. I think more people are turning toward the NBA, becoming NBA fans. Participation is up.
Yeah, that's a tough question. I mean, we have a lot of success in the NBA right now. I'm not sure there is need for a lot of change. I know that there's always discussion about rules changes and draft age changes and free agency and draft dates of which comes first and second. But I don't really see a lot of major changes over the next decade. I mean, there will be different philosophies. We go through different phases of what kind of defense teams play, and everybody copies this new coach's successful defense and looks for the player that can match up with this player that is transitional or transcendent. So I think that we're going to continue to see transcendent players enter our league, and it just makes our league. I think our league is better now than it's ever been.
And do you think for the next decade you'll continue in your role?
Oh, I have no idea. I mean, after this interview, Wick might fire me tomorrow.
Let's hope that doesn't
happen. They might hire Scalabrini.
And on that note, I'd like to thank you all for coming to WBUR City Space. I hope you enjoyed this event. I hope you will come back. We're going to have more sports events in the future. And keep an eye on the website. Thank you all for coming, and especially thank you, Danny Ainge, for taking the time.